Good morning, everyone. We studied today the portion of Naso, and I'm sharing with you the second Sikha, talk of the Rebbe, that's published in selections from Likutei Sichos. We are going to talk about the idea of unity. What does unity entail? Is it losing your details, or it includes the details and being united? So in this week's Torah portion, it's the longest Torah portion of any Torah portion in the Torah, 176 verses. A large portion is the 5th, 6th, and 7th Aliyah, where we read about the dedication of the temple that began on the 1st of Nisan. Each day, a leader of a tribe dedicated by bringing sacrifices and gifts to the temple. The gifts and sacrifices were equally the same. They brought them every day without an interruption, including Shabbat. So they brought an individual sacrifice on Shabbat, which is the exception, never happened before or after. They also ktoret, the spices that were placed on the golden altar, were never to be brought from an individual, but by the community. Here, every leader every day dedicated and donated the spices for that altar, which is an individual. So this, and individuals bring in. These are very unique, and it will touch upon it soon. But says the Rebbe that towards the conclusion of the entire 12 days of dedicating by each tribes, beginning with Yehuda, goes on with Ephraim, then it goes with, the Yehuda, then Ephraim, then Issachar, and it goes on and on. The Torah concludes the following: Zot Chanukat HaMizbeach beyom yimashach oto. This is the dedication of the temple on the day they anointed the altar from the 12 leaders, and it gives the sum of all donations that were born. Karot kesef 12, silver bowl 12, mizrekei kesef, utensils from silver 12, and it goes on with the total number. But the Medrash goes on to say this is the sum dedication of the altar on the day it was dedicated. It is incorrect. The grammar is incorrect, because it's not in the day it was dedicated, in the days, plural, because each one dedicated is a different day. Says the Medrash, it is considered Keilu, as if they kulam all dedicated on the first day. In other words, although one bought on the second, the third, the fourth, the fifth, they all are considered as if they bought it for the first time on the first day. But the Medrash does not conclude with that. The Medrash goes on to say, Vekeilu, as if they all dedicated on the last day. In other words, the Medrash says, it's considered, the Torah gives us a sum as that they bought at the day they dedicated the altar, even though each dedicated on a different day. And you seemingly, after the first day, you cannot say it's the first time you're dedicating it, because it's already the second, the third day, or people dedicated before. It's considered as if they all bought on the first day, and it's considered as if they all bought the last day. Says the Rebbe, I understand the benefit of saying everybody bought on the first day. Assuming the Medrash gives us, he has a reason. What's the benefit of they all bought it on the last day? What's so big deal having brought, considered as if it bought on the last day? In addition, that the Torah does not hint to it. The Torah says, Beyom yimashach oto, the day it was anointed, meaning the first day for the first time. So I understand the 3rd, the 4th, the 11th, the 12th, we say to them, you know what, even though you did it in separate days, you are considered as if you dedicated it for the first time on the first day. But the Medrash says, Keilu, as if they anointed it on the last day. What's so special? That's the first question. Says the Rebbe, the answer for this is a very simple one. Before we get into more questions, the solution for that is the following. The reason the leaders each dedicated and not Moshe and Aaron, after all, Aaron was appointed by God to be the Kohen. Moshe was appointed by God to be in charge of building it. Similarly, let them complete the job and be the first one to dedicate the altar. The reason God asked the leaders of tribes is because each tribe serves God in a unique way. One is out of love. Another one is out of kindness. Another one is out of study. Another one is out of caring for others before oneself. Another one is for protection, zealous. There are different natures, different traits that spell out throughout the 12 tribes. Each one is unique. And therefore, God wants that each one of those traits be equally considered by God as if they are doing a perfect job. There is no way that someone who is like the king is serving God greater than someone who is a guard. There is no way that someone who is a zealous because he cares about God's word should be inferior or superior to someone who is serving God by being kind to a stranger. There is no one someone who is studying Torah and teaching Jewish law should be the one superior to others. Therefore, God says each one must bring every day. And therefore, when they bought it for the first time according to their nature. So Naphtali, one of the 12 tribes, is number 12, is the last one. What does Yaakov blesses Naphtali? Ayala shlucha, a quick to run deer. Deer is one of the fastest running animals. Naphtali is like someone who is hasten in a very quick in serving God. In other words, other people might serve God in a greater, deeper way. They take their time, they make sure all the details are involved. Naphtali, as soon as he hears God's commandment, he runs to do it. No one dedicated the temple, the altar, in that way of serving of God until Naphtali came. Therefore, they all are beyom imashachoto. They dedicated it for the first time. So Yehuda, the first one, is a king. He's dedicating it on the first day. Ephraim, who is there to guard, he is, or to give advice, he actually is the one who advised them to do it. His second day and his day, dedicating it in that type of service of God. No one else did it before. Therefore, it's considered as if they dedicated for the first day. And then what's the benefit of the last day? There is another benefit, and that is where everyone else dedicated, and it's a whole, it's complete. Now it's considered as if they all completed it. Therefore, in other words, we've heard, I'm sure you heard, in Judaism, the last one who completes a project gets credit for the full credit. Yosef, as an example, on a side note, bones of Yosef. Who cares about Yosef's bones to fulfill the vow to bury him in Israel? Moshe. Moshe carried them the whole 40 years. Who is credited for burying them in Shechem, in Nablus? Bnei Israel, the Jewish people. Why? Because Moshe did not marry to go into the Holy Land and bury him. Therefore, the Jewish people got the credit because they are the last one to complete. Anytime there is a project and someone, in this week's Torah portion, by the way, the same thing. We give a credit to Moshe for building the temple, even though seemingly Bezalel and Oliav, there were two men representing Yehuda and Dan, are the ones who put, but says that the Rashi, he put all his heart and all his life, and he's the one who erected it for the last time. He gets the credit for it. In other words, having last in this way, where it completes all of the 12 paths, and making it a whole, that there is no one to be accepted except an exception. There is no one outside of the realm of serving God. Therefore, we give each one credit as if he's the one who completed it. Now we understand the first and the last. Is that clear? Again, the first one, because no one served God or dedicated the temple or the altar in the particular way that that tribe did. So when he did it for the first day, like his first day. Last day is also a great trait because at that point it completes all the other 11s. 11 paths. So therefore, each one is getting credit as if he brought the last one. Not Naphtali, but Asher, Issachar, Zebulun, Shimon, Reuven, all are as if they brought it the last time. So Rebbe, that explains, just on a side note, how the Medrash says that the only way Ephraim is the second tribe, the second one chosen, that was doing it on Shabbat. Is it possible to bring an individual sacrifice on Shabbat? Obviously not. The only way the Medrash said is because they all brought it equally the same. If there was an iota of change in the quantity of Ktoret, or there is an iota of difference between the animals each one brought, now it's not a communal, it's not representing the entire community, but one themselves or their tribe, and it's forbidden to bring an individual. Says the Rebbe, there must have been here that even though each individual had their own kavanot, their own traits, their own ability of serving God, but it was all inclusive in the rest of the 11 tribes, and that's why first is very important, but being last is as equally as important. Otherwise, the second tribe will not be allowed to be on Shabbat. You will have to skip Shabbat.
I think the miracle that occurred, Rabbi, that they didn't check with each other, and yet they brought the same exact sacrifice every day.
That's one medrash, but that's not according to what all the other medrashim say, that they all came together and Ephraim gave him advice and he gave them the exact specific advice. Not only that, Moshe was told by God, as we're going to see here. So it's not that way. And we can accommodate both medrashim. Just outside the class, I'll be happy to. The Rebbe is asking, if so, why 12 separate days? Why not bring everyone the same day? Allow each one to bring, you give the order, they take a lot, or God tells them, and let them bring it in the same day. This way, they all are the first and the last. In addition, Moshe wanted to do it in one day. And God says to him, Kach me'itam ve'hayu la'avod et avodat Hashem. God says to Moshe, take it, but make sure each one is in a separate day. In other words, God is the one who ordered separate days. And the question that comes, why? Now you're separating them. Now you have to tell me that they all consider the first and last. Why shouldn't they all bring on the same day? Says the Rebbe that another question, the introduction to the dedication of the altar, we read about them bringing a joint gift. Shesh eglot tzav, in this week's portion, 6 turtle wagons. Turtle wagons are wagons that have covering. Ushnei asar bakar, and 12 balls. Each one, 2 balls pulling one wagon. So together, they join together. Says, I don't understand. In holiness, you do a complete job. You don't do half a job. It's a known thing. If they together brought 6 turtle wagons, it means each one donated a half a wagon. They had plenty of money. Why didn't they give 12? The balls were 12 balls. Each one gave 1 ball. But how many balls you need to pull a wagon? 2, the Torah tells us. So each one with each ball, there is nothing you can do because you couldn't carry the load of the wood of the beam. So heavy, you needed 2 balls to carry, to push, to pull, and to move. So why aren't they doing each one bringing 2 balls the way it should be? And 12 wagons, why 6 wagons? Why they bring half? Says the Rebbe, now we need to understand the benefit or the greatness of being a Jewish person. There are 2 ways of looking at it. And obviously the Rebbe is going to get to a third way. That's the Rebbe's, so to say, chidush. The Rebbe says that every individual as part of the Jewish community, you have two types, 2 ways of looking how we are united. By the way, what I'm sharing with you apply to every community, And what I'm sharing with you apply to every family. Within every family, it's the exact same way. But the Rebbe is speaking, and the Torah, this week's Torah portion is dealing with the Jewish people. The Jewish people have one way in which they are all united and equal, looking at the root. The root is all the same. They're part of a family. Being part of the family unites us all. Being part of the tribe, being part of the Jewish people, there is no difference between tribes, male, females, older, younger, smart, respected. It doesn't matter. We all have the same core, as we call it. We all have the same potential, we all have the same ability, and we all are counted equally. Like a minion. You don't look at someone, oh, you're smart, you read Hebrew, you did a mitzvah today. Everybody's counted. In that way, every single Jew is equally the same. That's looking from the root where we all came from. We stem from one father, Yaakov, 4 mothers, but one father. Then you have another way of looking at the Jewish people as a whole, and that is each individual abilities, traits, liking. In other words, I like dairy. Someone likes meat. I like to serve God by praying. Another one likes to serve God by doing mitzvot. Someone cherishes Shabbat. I cherish Shavuot. Everyone has their own way of connecting to God, their own unique way, which is unique to every individual. But they all come together and form a tapestry that includes many colors. In that way, it's very beautiful that everybody comes for one goal. What is? To serve God. So now you don't want to lose the identity of the person. You want to express the identity because that's the only way to bring everybody into a beautiful tapestry. Did that make sense, Ali?
Yeah.
So in one way, you look in, says the Rebbe, the benefit of the first way is that you look at the core, at the root. In the root, we all are equal. No one is better than the other. Everybody is great. Everybody is important. No one should be discounted. The benefit of the second one is you need to contemplate and find your uniqueness and express it and still be counted as part of the community. You are a piece of the puzzle, and if you are missing, the puzzle is incomplete and no other piece can replace your part. So if someone has a certain color means traits, abilities, connection to one another, to God, it is unique to that person and no one can replace. You cannot say, okay, let's have another person take that place, because that person that you want to put in this place belongs for another part of the puzzle and everyone to get together. So in other words, you have two ways of looking at being united. One, you look at the root, everyone equal, everyone is important, everyone is valuable. Another way is looking at each individual's details and say, this is unique for this person and no one else can replace it, and he is going to complete the whole project. Without that unique individual talents, abilities, existence, the project is incomplete. Why? Because there is something unique to that person that brings to the table that no one else can bring. Did I make myself clear? Says the Rebbe, this is the idea of first day and last day. And that will explain why the introduction had to be something they bought jointly. In the first day, when you say every leader brought as if he brought, dedicating it for the first day, is looking at the root. The root of the Jewish people are all equally the same. If they are equally the same, how do you introduce the idea of dedicating the altar? You first need to show that you are no different than others, and that's why the introduction is bringing the wagons, the turtle wagons and the balls that had to be half. In other words, you are incomplete without somebody else, and that somebody else will bring equally the same, 50%. There is no 60, 40, 35, 70, 75, 65. It has to be 50-50. And the Rebbe says that explains why it's mentioned before the dedication of the altar. After all, God says, take them and let them carry the temple weight. There's nothing to do with dedicating a temple. Why are they mentioned as introduction to dedicating the altar? We talk about dedicating a temple. You want to talk about the gifts that they bought? Bring it. Mention that when they bought the gifts to build the temple. Then you say that they bought those gifts to carry the tapestries, the beams, etc. But you want to explain that when everyone bought on his particular day, it was the first day for that individual because he is treated equally like number one, like number two. So number 7 is first. He is treated equally to number 1, to number 7, to number 12. That's the introduction that they all had to bring something jointly. That says the Medrash, Beyomi Mashachoto, meaning the day God dedicated the altar, that tribe bought it for the first time because all are equal. But then the Medrash says that also the Torah is hinted to that the last day is considered as if everybody bought in the last day, because on the last day you have to complete the tapestry. So therefore you look at the individual's talent, individual's abilities in serving of God, and you say in that way, you are very unique and you are needed for the rest of Jewish people. It cannot be completed without your contribution. And if the fact that someone is a king and you are chopping wood, and someone is a teacher, and the third one is riding horses, does not negate the fact that you need all that to create a family. You need all that to create a community. You need all that to serve God. God wants to be served in all possible ways. And therefore, the completion of this will never happen unless every single tribe had contributed each part in the way it's expressed in this universe. In other words, it's representing the last day.
So,
Did I make myself clear?
I have a question.
First, do you understand?
About what you're talking about?
Yes, go ahead.
How come, why is it Moshe then considered when he had to drag the bones? I mean, if we could never have buried Joseph in Israel if Moshe hadn't dragged the bones. So he was just as necessary for the outcome as that same argument could be made that Moshe should be getting not the last one, but everybody who was necessary should be getting the credit.
This is a rule set by God that a mitzvah nikret al shem gomra. A mitzvah. If we both involved in a mitzvah, let's say we both are prepared for an oneg. Okay? And we both cut salads. We both went shopping. You shop for vegetables, I shop for fruits. We both brought it to the kitchen. And a third person came and chopped it and put it in plates and put it out. They get the credit.
I heard that. Then
because that's the way the Torah tells us. To me,
but
does it make sense? I'm not so sure, but that's the rule. Ein mitzvah nikret ela al shem gomra. It's a statement in the Talmud that appears in the Torah, many examples.
So given that, then how can you make the argument you just made that the last one isn't the one who completed it?
No, the last one is completing it.
No, you said that they all are considered the last day.
They all, each one is considered as if they bought it on the last day.
But they didn't.
To get it, because they were doing it as a project to get there. And therefore, somebody had to be first, somebody has to be second.
Joseph's bones.
Okay, but Joseph bones have nothing to do with this. Joseph bones can be done by one individual. Here you needed everyone to create a tapestry, to create a puzzle. So one is not greater than the other. Each individual must be different, not to repeat. So there is perhaps I should.
But we'll leave it like I don't see the difference.
In Joseph's case, Joseph is the only one who did it up to the time he entered the Holy Land. After that, only Moshe, in Moshe, yeah. After that, the Jewish people did it. Therefore, it says that the Jewish people buried Joseph.
But both were a part of the tapestry. Without Moshe bringing the bones, the Jewish people
couldn't. Of course, but that's the idea, that the last one gets the credit.
Then why are we having this argument about these?
But the credit, there is no, the complete, so here I'm here to tell you that the fifth day, a tribe, a leader brought, he had completed the project. And that day he completed, because no one did it before, no one did it after. In his way of serving God, by dedicating with the altar, he's the first one who ever done it. And he's the last one who ever done that. So you don't need someone else to complete the project. It's a complete project. Then you look at the whole, you look at the minion. You look at the minion.
Okay.
Each individual contributes. The last one If there are only 10, gets the credit, right? However, if someone else is
It's a
living,
joint project.
ah,
It's a joint
that's the
project, so
idea.
why does only
So
the last
therefore,
one
the last one don't get the credit unless there are 11.
Because they're all unique.
They're all, each
Okay.
is unique.
Good, go on. I'm done with this. I surrender. Ali surrenders. Write it down.
The Rebbe says that the Alter Rebbe, the first Chabad Rebbe, when dealing with this discussion, he says that this represents a Kabbalistic terminology called igulim. Igul in Hebrew is a circle, and circle, because just like Ali, just and I did, igulim, we're going circles. Circles means no beginning, no end. The Rebbe says that what he's hinted to, I don't see it in the Alter Rebbe, maybe because I'm not smart enough, but the Rebbe's always looking to give credit to somebody. He says that there is something else above those two, and that is to be an individual, but within the individual to have included everybody else. And here is the way the Rebbe explained. I'll try and do my best. The Rebbe used an example, so I'm going to use the example. The Rebbe says there is a rule, does not apply to halacha, please. Don't include it as justification for disobeying God, okay? Please. The halacha is osek b'mitzvah patur min mitzvah. If I'm busy with a mitzvah wholeheartedly, I'm exempt from doing other mitzvot. For example, someone who studies Torah all day without interruption, he does not watch Netflix, and he does not go out for a baseball game. He studies Torah all day. He's exempt from prayer. Why? Why? Because prayer is serving God. Study Torah is serving God. So he's busy doing what God says, and therefore he's exempt. It does not allow for anyone to exempt himself. When the Rebbe started with Mivtzat Tefillin, I have to share that because I was wondering if I should share it or not. So since I wrote it, the Rebbe in 1967, before the second day war, the Rebbe says every individual should put on Tefillin, and it brings great honor to God. A Chabad Bacher, a yeshiva boy, turned to the Rebbe, wrote to the Rebbe, does he allowed to exempt himself from prayer or study of Torah because he's busy putting on tefillin with Jews? In other words, these are people who don't do any mitzvot. So the mitzvah is great. You do double mitzvah. A, you help someone do a mitzvah. B, you make that individual put on tefillin, which otherwise he wouldn't. So perhaps I don't have to study Torah. Perhaps I can skip prayer because the Rebbe through the secretary, Rabbi Chadakov, sent a very sharp message. And the Rebbe says, all I said is to add in serving of God more mitzvot around, more Torah around, and not, God forbid, to use it as an excuse to do less. So we do never take it the way it's just simply sound. But anyway, the rule is osek b'mitzvah patur min mitzvah. If someone is busy, like Rabbi Shimon Bar Yochai in the cave, he did not fulfill other mitzvot because he had no matzah in the cave. Assuming, I'm not sure, but I think he did not have all the mitzvot of getting married, getting divorced, all the other mitzvot did not apply to him because he was busy doing mitzvah. What's the mitzvah? Study Torah. Therefore, he was exempt. There was no wine to do. The Medrash says that there was a tree, a carob that would turn into a grapevine that you would squeeze grapes and do kiddush. But there was no bread. There was no Oneg Shabbos. There is no many mitzvot because he was busy studying Torah. That's why we have the Zohar. They wrote the Zohar, the greatest revelations of the Torah, in the cave. Back to him, says the Rebbe, according to Kabbalah, what do you mean if you're busy with one mitzvah, you're exempt from another mitzvah? You know why? Because when you perform one mitzvah in a particular way, let's say you are lighting Shabbat candles, within that mitzvah, you have all of the other mitzvot hidden. So therefore, when I'm busy with one mitzvah, I'm exempt from another mitzvah because I'm actually doing it. Every mitzvah as an individual colored particular way of serving God is not just this particular, it's that part, that particular way is the one that's revealed. But inner part, the DNA, the core, the root, has all 613 parts to it. That explains, by the way, that why is it as we're obligated to fulfill 613 mitzvot? Well, it's impossible. I'm not in the Holy Land. I'm not a king. I'm not a Kohen. Many of them so apply to a Levite, to a Kohen, to an Israelite, to a firstborn, to a female, to a male. But if you are told that you're serving God with all your heart as best as you can, every time you perform a mitzvah, like reciting the Shema, like eating kosher, making a bracha before, that mitzvah is the one part that is expressed outwards. But inwards, it includes all 613. By the way, the Rebbe spoke that many years back, in 1982, before the revelation of DNA. Today, with DNA, we know that every body part stems from the same DNA, except that DNA is developed into a particular, to a bone, to a sinew, to a toe, to a nail, to hair. But in essence, I can draw the DNA from my hair, the same DNA that comes from my heart. In other words, the hair is what you see, is the one particular way it developed, but you can go backwards, reverse engineering, and find the DNA that will create a heart and will create the brains. That's the same idea the Rebbe said before, way years, light years before it was revealed. Today it's much easier to comprehend. Then it was difficult. But the Rebbe says, in every mitzvah I do, when I do a bracha for food, I'm also honoring my father and mother. I'm also bringing tithes in the Beit HaMikdash. I'm also bringing sacrifices. Every mitzvah is within. That's the idea of igulim, all encircled. On one hand, you must develop your individual talent. You must find your path in serving God. That's the only way God demands of you. Each tribe of the 12 is no similar to another one, must remain. And that's why God says, no, give them a separate day, each a separate day. Although they all consider, like they brought in the first day, that they all in the core are all one, at the same time, the uniting of all of them is when the individual details and talents and ability are brought to the fore, and someone serves God by painting, someone serves God by running around, someone serving God by supporting others. Everyone, their part in the puzzle is all inclusive. It includes every other talent as well, and that's why it's considered about the last day, meaning at the same time they each had their own particular talent. It was including all the other 11 talents as well. And why is it important? It's important for me to know as a Jew. And by the way, that's why the introduction to them, as I said, and I have to repeat, was to bring the wagon, the Torah wagons and the balls that each individual needed to make a complete project with somebody else. Because alone, no matter how rich you are, no matter how talented you are, no matter how unique you are not counted. You have to be counted with the rest. And that's where the Rebbe says that's the third level of unity, where we are united as one from our core. But as the individual talent is developed, you have to remember not only that we are all needed, because without me, the tapestry is not complete. Without you, it's missing a color, it's missing a part. But because within you are including all other details that ever existed. It's all there, complete. That's the idea of Yom Acharon, last day, as is considered the third day, the fourth day. At the time with the completed, we say to the third day, you are the last day, not only the first day. And I think for us, the lessons are very obvious, how unique each individual, and never to be duplicated, and never to be underestimated, undervalued, and not to be copying somebody else. I should not live someone else's life, because the tapestry of Jewish people is going to be missing. And that's the lesson from this week's Torah portion. Thank you very much.
Thank you, Rabbi.
Shabbat Shalom, everybody. Bye.
Shabbat Shalom. Thank you.
You're welcome.